Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast, hosted by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. Once again, coming at you live on YouTube. Make sure you're going over to that YouTube channel, popping a like on there, and clicking the thumbs up button so you get a notification every time Brant and I go live here with the Fatboyz Pod. Definitely some other stuff coming at you. I think Seth is getting DWF on the YouTube channel at some point in the near future. So definitely some interesting times coming, and you don't want to miss out on all that's going on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're jumping over there and subscribing so you get notifications. So Brant, here we are. We're a little over 2 weeks out from the NFL draft. It's crunch time for all of us dynasty folks who have been doing our research. It's time to see if they pay off. Now, you and I both know, Brant, that with us having some time doing this, that you can fall in love with a player, and then if that landing spot just ends up being horrendous, you gotta cut ties with a player and be willing to pivot and move on. So I found it's best for me to fall in love with 3 or 4 different guys per round that I expect them to be available in my rookie drafts. That way I'm not tied to any one player unless I have the certain pick in each round where I'm going to have my choice. But these landing spots do make a darn difference. Draft capital makes a darn difference. And it's an ever-changing world we live in, especially when it comes to these rookies and the NFL draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now is so quote unquote the dead time of the NFL. You don't have a whole lot of free agencies, although we did see OBJ get moved or signed with the Ravens. But yeah, it's the time to really buckle down and kind of look at these rookies and get your own perspective on these rookies, or start listening to, some people that have been out there looking at some rookies. That's one thing that we're going to cover today is some deep dive rookies. So that way you don't fall in love with that one guy. Like if you don't have the 101 and you're still in need of a running back though, but you don't have you're obviously not getting the Robinson in your rookie draft. Who are some of these other guys that you can go take a look at that pending, like you said, landing spot, draft capital, what's in front of them could instantly, a few of these guys could instantly make a difference in it. So yeah, this is quote unquote, like I said, the dead time. I also want to say, if you're on the YouTube, drop a like, subscribe. I know you probably already hit it too while I was in my own little zone out Monday morning world. But yeah, we're going live Mondays. Also, if you're out at the draft, look for this beautiful mug. I will be live at the draft for day 1 and 2. Don't hesitate to stop by, say hello. I'll be out and about during the day 1 and 2 of the NFL draft in Kansas City if anybody else is out there. But yeah, let's jump into some of these deep dive rookies here. I know we got a few at each position. So without further ado, Bo, if you want to get us kicked off, or I can just let me know how you want to do it.
Brant, I think most of the guys you and I are going to talk about, you aren't going to see drafted day 1 and 2 probably at the NFL draft. So these are guys that are going to be a little bit later. Now, I do want to say one more thing about a lot of these guys, and that's simply kind of the way you alluded to. There's a tier breakdown, right, of these positions that are kind of already there. And there's some guys that are pretty well landing spot. And not so much dependent. You got your Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and it seems like Zach Charbonnet is kind of up there at this point in your running backs. Then you got your big 3 wide receivers in JSN, Quentin Johnston, and Jordan Addison. Zay Flowers almost creeping into that category to make it a big 4 there. And then your tight end position's just so deep that those guys too aren't really going to make a bit of a difference. But there's some guys below that if their landing spot happens to be the right spot, it could be an electric deal for fantasy football. So let's get into this, Brant. Let's start at the quarterback position. I'll go ahead and go first. I've got Malik Cunningham, a 24-year-old quarterback coming out of the University of Louisville. He was a 5th-year player there, obviously with the COVID years and stuff. But this guy is the dictionary definition of a dual threat. Very reminiscent of Lamar Jackson at Louisville. Obviously not quite the video game numbers. I don't expect this guy to be drafted in the first round like Lamar was. However, this quarterback could be the type of a guy that if he ends up in the right system where he sits for a year or happens to fall to a Baltimore or Arizona where they're going to have some quarterback issues potentially and not have a starter ready for day 1. This guy could be amazing. 6'1", 190 pounds, so a little bit on the slender side for a quarterback. threw 1,105 passes at Louisville, completed 692 of them for a 62.8% completion rating, threw for 9,664 yards, 70 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, added another 619 rushing attempts to go along with 3,184 yards and another 50 touchdowns on the ground. So this guy absolutely is the dictionary definition of a dual threat. 120 total touchdowns from the quarterback position in college football. And that in his first year, when I said he was a 5-year player at Louisville, he really only played like one game. I think he threw something like 30 passes in his entire first year there. So a lot of this was just in a 4-year career. Just absolutely electric numbers there, Brant.
Yeah, he was very fun to watch during college. I think that his running ability definitely could make a difference in the NFL if given the right opportunity and the right system. And like we always say, you want that rushing upside in a quarterback when it comes to fantasy. So that's actually going to lead me right into my guy. But yeah, Cunningham, I watched him play actually quite a bit. They played, Thursday nights and late Saturday sometimes. So I really got a chance to watch him play in college, and a very electric guy. Could come in and actually shock a lot of people with how good he actually is.
Absolutely.
So this is another guy that if you stayed up late to watch a little college football on a Saturday night, you may have seen him play. And that's Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. He's 23 years old, 5 years there at UCLA. He's projected anywhere to go from the 4th to the 6th, so that day 3 range. He was electric. I mean, he had some accuracy issues, which will be big project to work on, but his mobility, his way to get out of the pocket, still find space, find the open guys was amazing. He threw for 3,154 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, going 266 for 382 in his final year there at UCLA. He also ran for 117 times, 646 yards, adding another 12 touchdowns all in his final year there at UCLA. Like I said, this guy, he's just mobile. He has no problems moving out of the pocket. Accuracy and footwork is sometimes a bit of a question. But what's the rushing upside? He gets the opportunity, sits a year or two behind some of these veterans. Kirk Cousins is coming up on his final couple years. Geno's only there for 3. I'm sure there's a few more names that I'm missing out there, but I mean, you see it all the time, the turnover, and this is a guy that really could make some shockwaves in camp and really boost his chance to make an NFL team and stick around there for a while and possibly get a starting job with how mobile and electric he is. You give him the right QB coach in the right spot, this guy could absolutely be a diamond in the rough for a lot of teams.
Yeah, Brant, I think you and I both kind of hit the nail on the head here. The NFL world and the fantasy football world for sure is kind of going to that more mobile quarterback who can get it done both with his legs and his arm. And these guys both fit that bill. Both these guys are guys that could launch massive scores each week if they end up as a starter someplace. And again, like I said, when it comes to fantasy production at your quarterback position, you don't want just a pocket passer unless they're guys like Patrick Mahomes or maybe even Justin Herbert. But you want those mobile guys because they can get out of the pocket, they can make plays and extend plays when nobody's open downfield. So definitely 2 guys to keep your eye on there at the quarterback position as the NFL draft unfolds, because again, draft capital matters.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Brant, let's move into the running backs here. I believe we both have 2 of these guys here. So I'm going to start with one here that's from a hometown college, if you will. I'm going to go with Chase Brown, the 5'11", 205-pound, 21-year-old from the University of Illinois. Chase Brown's right now is anywhere from the 4th to the 5th round. This is a guy that this year certainly at certain times looked to be the best running back in college. Did nothing but help himself at the combine as well. Just runs really hard. 605 attempts in college, 3,206 yards, 18 touchdowns, added another 48 receptions, 446 yards and 3 touchdowns. So obviously the reception numbers aren't necessarily where you'd like to see him. I mean, 48 receptions. I could be wrong on this. It's been a minute since I've looked, but I believe that's what Jahmyr Gibbs had this year at Alabama. So, it's not necessarily there to say that he could be a 3-down back. But if you remember, Kenneth Walker was a guy that coming out of college had a lot of question marks around how he could be utilized as a pass catcher. Didn't really do that a whole lot in college. Brant, I think you can tell everybody he was pretty phenomenal as a pass catcher. We talked about that a little bit on the last episode as well. But this guy, again, if he ends up in a spot like Atlanta, if Atlanta puts a 4th or 5th round draft pick on him and he's going in and competing with a guy like Tyler Algier, this could be a wonderful landing spot for a guy like Chase Brown. If you see him go to a spot like Miami or even Chicago where it's Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman, if some spot like that adds a guy like Chase Brown, his draft stock is going to shoot. He's going to go from potentially a 3rd or a 4th round pick in a rookie draft to a 2nd round pick in a rookie draft. So definitely some value here. Again, competing against the Big Ten, he's going to be a little bit more polished than some guys that went to smaller schools and stuff of that nature. So I think NFL teams take that into consideration too. If you look at the way things have gone in the past. So definitely a guy to keep your eye on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And with some of these running backs, we talk about draft stock and landing spot. Let's talk about Tyler Algier. Where did he get drafted last year? He was a 5th round draft, 6th round draft pick. Dameon Pierce, 4th round draft pick. Both guys got thrusted into a nice starting role. Both guys later in the year became very a little bit. So these guys right now are no one to actually sleep on. Like you really want to pay attention to where they're going and what's in front of them. Prime example, somebody goes to Philly. What's in front of him? Rashad Penny, hurt all the time. As painful as that is for me to say, he's hurt constantly. So, but yeah, I mean, you just got to look at that type of stock, or even you go down to Houston, you got Pierce. I know we just talked about Pierce being so good, but then you had Singletary and Boone, I think, are the other two in front of him. So the guy I have is just I love saying this. He's just a little guy out there running. He stays low. It kind of hits a little close to home to see a guy at the same height as me making some waves. I think I may have it by a few lbs. Just a few. But I'm going to talk about Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. He excuse me. He's 20 years old. He's 5'6", 180 pounds. So yeah, I got him by just a little bit at weight there. But he's quick. He's fast. If you watched him play at all, he's absolutely explosive. He makes tacklers look goofy out there in the open field. His lateral quickness is crazy. And he has amazing PPR upside. Some people have compared him to a Darren Sproles type of back, where he'll be just kind of a utility guy. Well, Austin Eckler was nothing but a utility guy to start his career. And now what has he done? Oh, top 5 fantasy finisher in the last couple seasons here. So not saying that Deuce Vaughn's going to come out and do this, but it may take a little time. But Deuce Vaughn, he showed that he can handle a workload this year. He had 293 carries, 1,558 yards for 9 touchdowns, added 42 receptions, 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's on top of the year prior, because he was a 2-year full-time starter there. The year prior, he had 235 attempts for 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. Added another 49 receptions and 4 more touchdowns in 2021. He's just a guy out there. He's a hard worker. Like I said, great hands for a running back. Could instantly get thrown into a 3rd down role on any team, and then just work his way up. And so, I mean, Deuce Vaughn's a guy that I've really kept my eye on throughout this past season in college, and I've definitely watched a little bit more on him. I think he has the opportunity to be in a real explosive back. And given the right situation, he, like I just said, could be, thrust into a starting role just because of injuries or anything else. I don't know, maybe, up there in Cincy where there's a question mark or sitting behind the running back's name for the season. So, but yeah, Deuce Vaughn's a guy that I'm definitely keeping my eye on.
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn is an electric player. I remember watching. I think they played in the bowl game against Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. Kansas State did, and he was very fun to watch there. So definitely a guy that, even though his small stature is a potential hindrance, he doesn't let it be one. Not in the way you do, because you're too wide to use it as to an advantage for you. So, but yeah, Deuce Vaughn, definitely a fun guy.
Before you jump into your next guy, if you guys need an opportunity to see how explosive this guy really is, go back, watch the Big 12 championship game against TCU. That was a back and forth game, and this guy really opened it up. I believe he had 2 rushing touchdowns of over 40 yards. If you want an opportunity to go watch this guy, this is where I think he really threw his name out there. But then you go back and you look at the way he played throughout the season. But that Big 12 championship is a great chance to see how explosive he is in the open field.
Yeah, absolutely, Brant. Again, like you said, that's a dangerous way to fall in love with a player right there, is going back and watching that game. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it was the bowl game against Alabama where he was pretty electric as well. So definitely some good footage of him out there against some pro-ready players. So my last running back, Brant, this is a guy that I can't stop talking about this offseason. I'm going to talk about him again next week when we do the episode that we're going to do. But this is Tank Bigsby, the 21-year-old running back out of Auburn. This is definitely one of my guys. Definitely loved Tank Bigsby for a few years here. I mean, how could you not with a name like Tank Bigsby? Just think of the fun things you could do with that if you get him on your roster with your team name. I'm not going to give you all the answers here, but I mean, just the possibilities are endless. How could you? I'm infatuated. It is what it is, Brant. I'm in love with this guy. I may draft him at the 102. I don't know. I'm not going to do that. But nonetheless, in his career at Auburn, these numbers actually kind of, when I looked at these and I was writing these down, it kind of jumped off at me because I didn't think he had been this good. But 540 attempts, 2,903 yards, and 25 touchdowns at Auburn to go along with 62 receptions, 448 yards receiving as well. Now, the problem here is he didn't add any receiving touchdowns, but this guy is an absolute beast when it comes to goal line rushes, and this is all done in the SEC, which I'm sorry, for college football, I'm not sure there's a better conference as far as playing pro caliber players week in and week out than there is in the SEC. And to see a running back like Tank Bigsby, who he's got the pedigree, right? He was one of the highest rated running backs in his recruiting class. I think he was like the second rated running back behind, I think it was Keandre Miller. That's actually coming out in this class as well that I didn't talk about. Maybe you did. I'm not sure. But Tank Bigsby he's got the pedigree. He came into Auburn. He underperformed a little bit. I think a lot of people were expecting him to do kind of Bijan things. But Tank Bigsby's a guy that, again, if he falls to the right landing spot, you watch a guy like Tank Bigsby, Brant, end up in Kansas City and watch people just go absolutely berserk. If Kansas City puts a fourth round draft capital on a guy like him, he's going to have a CEH effect. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing necessarily, but I really like Tank Bigsby. I think there's a chance that he's going to be very fantasy relevant. It's just going to depend on where he goes. I honestly, it would suck initially, but a guy like Tank Bigsby in Tennessee sitting for a year behind Derrick Henry, and then eventually having a chance to take those reins next year would be phenomenal, because you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a team that's going to run the ball 30 plus times a game, and you're going to get 25 of those carries in his hands, and he would definitely fit the mold there. So definitely would be a great spot. Obviously, that would lower his draft capital in rookie drafts significantly. Instead of being a potential second round, it'd be a third or a fourth rounder, because people are going to worry about him sitting behind Derrick Henry. But remember, Derrick Henry wasn't Derrick Henry when DeMarco Murray was in town. So definitely some things to keep your eye on there. Tank Bigsby is one of my favorite players in this draft class.
Needless to say, to go from a king to a tank, if that happens there. But yeah, I mean, like you said, with a name like Tank, how can you not like this guy? How can you not cheer for him to be, a good running back? Yeah, he's going to be a guy that's going to get an opportunity. I believe he'll get an opportunity. It may be one of those wait for opportunities, but yes, he definitely will get an opportunity in my mind. I haven't done a whole lot of film research on him. But yeah, watching Auburn play this year, he definitely is a guy that that has very decent vision. Will probably need a little bit to work on, but that's what these late round rookies normally are. Is you got to do a little work with them. So this guy that I'm going to actually talk about next is a guy that wasn't on my radar till I saw a lot of these mock drafts having Seattle take him, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" I got to go back. I got to look, and that's Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. I'm probably messing up the first name because I'm so great with first names. He's projected to go in the 3rd and 4th round. He's 5'10", 195 pounds, 21 years old. This past year, stats not really going to jump off too bad. 229 attempts, 1,581 yards. This is the stat that will jump off. 19 touchdowns. Has a nose for the end zone. 22 receptions, 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, he's projected in the 3rd to 4th round. He's got great vision. He's got great. He would be great in a zone run scheme, I think. Just watching, the little film I did on him. Excuse me. He's got some great lateral quickness. It will have to be worked on in the pros because you're not going to make tacklers look goofy like you do when you're at Tulane playing some of those smaller schools. But I think he's got a very high upside. He doesn't mind pass blocking when he's in, so that will almost instantly get him a chance to get on the field as a 3rd down back or in obvious passing situations. He'll be a good change of pace back, I think, to start his career. But this is a guy that in my mind, even though he only had 22 receptions, he has a chance to be a great PPR upside guy. Because of his chance to get out there and pass block and have no problems getting out there and doing the dirty work. He's one of those guys that, like I said, when you get out there and you show that you'll do the dirty work and you'll put in the work, I think you have a good chance of seeing the field a little bit earlier than a lot of other players.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the part with these running backs, Brant, is more so that we're getting ready to go into the wide receivers here. With running backs, draft capital, landing spot is going to make an absolute massive difference. Whereas these running wide receivers, even in the later rounds, if they go to the right spot, the right situation, they can be really just fantasy assets. I mean, we watched Romeo Doubs have some games last year. Off the top of my head, that's really all I can think of. But there's been plenty of wide receivers drafted in the later rounds that have had fantasy impact. And I think that's what you're going to see with this class too. Whereas the running backs, they're going to have the right situation, the right landing spot, the right draft capital to see them really shine. But there's a lot really outside of Zach Charbonnet is what it is. I need to do a little bit more independent research on him. I haven't watched quite enough film on him yet.
I have to avoid watching UCLA running backs because I may or may not fall in love with them or easy.
You do. But obviously Bijan and Jameer are kind of in a class of their own, right? And then I think the rest of it, there's like 10 guys that could be the running back number 4 in my rankings. So it's just going to depend on landing spot for these guys. And like I said, so the NFL draft is going to be a huge deal. And obviously, Brant, I think you and I will come out and re-rank these guys at each position after the draft. Because again, and that's when you'll see us start doing some mock drafts because landing spots do make a difference. For these rookies. So if you're go ahead.
And before you jump into the wide receivers, with running backs, if you obviously you pay attention to fantasy football, it's going to more of a committee backfield in a lot of places. So I mean, you get players like Deuce Vaughn, Tank Bigsby, them going to the right spot that it's going to be a committee. It's almost an easier shot that they're going to get on the field and they'll be worthy of a flex start. Or even in, with the way that the NFL's going, that it's almost if they get on the field and they see a few passes here and there and 10 carries, they're almost worthy of an RB2 start because the upside's there. And with the committee, it's with the way the NFL's going with the committee, it's almost harder to focus as it was a few years ago where you had the workhorse running backs getting 300 carries a year. So a lot of these running backs in the deeper rounds, you really got to look into.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Brant. And again, I think that's another big reason why a lot of us in the fantasy landscape are starting to shy away from running backs and putting more value on the wide receiver position because, do I want to start a guy that's going to get 10 carries from maybe 30 yards or do I want to start a guy that's going to have 6 targets thrown his way, where he potentially may get 40 to 50 yards receiving and a touchdown, especially in point per reception leagues. It's just definitely shifted a little bit. And that's unfortunate because there's nothing more fun than having a bell cow running back going out and knowing, if you're down 15 points or whatever, and you still got that guy on the field, you still got that Derrick Henry to play, that you're going to be contending. So, but anyway, I digress. Let's get into these wide receivers, Brant. I did notice a reoccurring trend with myself when I was looking at these wide receivers, and I think it really just goes to show where the NFL landscape is these days. I couldn't find a wide receiver that I really liked that was a big-bodied guy in these later rounds. These guys are all roughly the same size, within 20 to 30 pounds of one another, about the same height. And they all have one really strong virtue to their game, and that's their speed. And the NFL is kind of going to that smaller, shiftier, speedier player, specifically at the wideout. If you look at it, there's not a whole lot of teams anymore that have those really big, tall-bodied guys that are going up making contested catches. They're getting guys in space with speed. I mean, Tyreek Hill has kind of come and single-handedly changed the landscape here. So the first one I'm going to start with, I know you like this guy too. I'm a fan. You're a fan. This is Josh Downs, the 21-year-old wide receiver out of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill there. He's got a 3rd-round draft capital on him right now, 5'10", 175 pounds, so a very slender guy. Devontae Smith-esque body stature. A lot of people were worried about him, Brant. I know you drafted him. How do you feel about owning Devonta Smith?
The first year was a little, to start it out was a little sketchy, with how small he was, but it's turned into an amazing thing. The little receiver that could, the slim
Absolutely.
reaper there. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, he sees, 7 to 10 targets a game, almost guaranteed, high powered offense. So I absolutely love owning him. It's great to have him stacked with this QB too.
Exactly. And so you put a guy like Josh Downs again in a system where they're going to be high passing, getting him 7 or 8 targets a game, letting him use his speed and his size to make moves and stuff. This guy could be electric for fantasy. In college, he had 202 receptions for 2,483 yards to go along with 22 touchdowns on the ground. So obviously he has been beneficial to play with Drake May there at UNC. So he's had a good quarterback. But this guy could be an absolute electric player again at his size. It doesn't scare me like it did when Devonta came out. I was still skeptical of the size, the slender frame. I think a lot of us were. I think you'd be lying if you said you weren't. Obviously some people had to draft him, and it worked out really well for those people. And I think now that you've seen guys like him come out and be so successful, it's opening the door for guys like Josh Downs, who are so small in size, to have that, higher ceiling value when it comes to these guys. So, and again, like I said, the wide receiver position is more valuable now than it ever has been.
Yeah. Downs will be a guy that will definitely be fun to watch. Like you said, landing spot dependent. A lot of these little guys, I got lucky and I did find a bigger bodied guy that I actually kind of liked in the later round. Actually in the later rounds. I'm going to go to my latest one here in 4th to 5th round draft selection. He's 23 years old, 6'3", 205 pounds. Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. He had 107 receptions, 1,171 yards, and 6 touchdowns this year. He's got great size. He's got very steady hands. Did not drop many passes. Decent route running ability, but that's kind of where he falls off. He would probably be, like you said, that the shiftier guys are making their way up to up the draft boards and into the NFL. So I think, the decent route running is really what brings him down. But with his size and his strength and his good hands, he could be a late round steal for any NFL team. He could easily slide into a number 2 role on some teams. I don't know if he'll ever be, a breakout stud wide receiver, but we've seen that multiple times in the NFL where late round receivers, come out of nowhere and surprise a lot of people. Xavier Hutchinson, he just kind of took me by surprise when I went out and watched a little bit of film on him last night. And it could be a late round steal. I'm gonna go back and watch a little bit more on him. But his speed is one thing that definitely is a knock on him. Is he's going to have to increase his speed to be able to compete at the NFL level a little bit more. But he's definitely going to be a guy to keep my eye on.
I think, Brant, I was sitting here scratching my head looking, and the last big-bodied later round wide receiver that I fell in love with, this is going to hit you right in the face because I know you heard me talk about him a lot on our podcast back in the day, was Mike Strachan, if you remember that name from the University of Chattanooga.
Amazing game against Seattle to open the season a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he definitely did nothing in the last 2 years. He's had like two different games a season where he's had some receptions, and that was a guy that I was absolutely in love with. I figured at his size and his frame, he'd be an absolute value in the NFL, and that never came true. So maybe Mike Strachan is the reason I avoid big-bodied wide receivers so much, because he is the definition of a tight end playing wide receiver, and it didn't happen. So yeah, nonetheless. So I'm going to say my favorite wide receiver out of this group for last, even though he's got a higher draft capital on him right now than these other guys, but I'm going to save him for last. I'm going to come back to him. So I'm going to go to a guy that's got fourth round to fifth round. Let me rephrase that. Mid fourth round, early fifth round draft capital on him right now. That's Raheem Jarrett, the 22-year-old wide receiver out of the University of Maryland. He's 6 foot tall, 190 pounds, decent 40 time. His pro day was pretty special, getting the ball thrown to him by Tagovailoa there, the one without the concussions at Maryland. In college, he had 119 receptions for 1,552 yards and 10 touchdowns. So not numbers that necessarily jump off the page, but this guy was not a starter early in his career. He was a later blossomer, but definitely a guy still that with his size, frame, and his route running, he's very crisp with the ball. Watching him reminded me of Adam Thielen a lot. This is a guy that I think he's going to be able to shake himself loose in the red zone, potentially be a end zone threat for a lot of guys or a lot of teams potentially. And this is, again, like I said, if he goes to the right spot, Brant, this is a name that again could fly up the rankings. I don't think you'll ever see him get into the top half of the second round, but maybe late second, early third round in your rookie drafts, in your leagues when you're doing these. This is a guy that you could keep a name on and watch as a potential dart throw, because again, if he goes to the right spot with his abilities and his speed, he could be really fun in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely could be. So one of my guys here, obviously I've been flipping through wide receivers, so I haven't watched a whole lot of film on a lot of guys. I've watched little bits and pieces of them. And that's going to be this little Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati. Very explosive wide receiver. He's got a fourth, fifth round draft grade on him. His numbers will not jump off the board at all, but his explosiveness and the ability to work out of the slot. He only had 54 receptions, 899 yards, and 9 touchdowns, 16.6 yards per reception. He's got great speed. He's a little undersized, but like you said, the undersized wide receivers are really coming out. He could be an amazing slot receiver in the right fit. I don't think he'll ever be, like a top 25, top 30 guy, but I think that he could be the Hunter Renfrow-esque name with the way that he falls in love with his quarterback and his work ethic. So he'll be great utilized in the underneath routes as the escape blanket. Yeah, so I absolutely I enjoyed watching his speed, and I'm excited to see where he goes, because you put him with somebody like Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts or even Tua or Josh Allen that can really extend the play and wait for this guy to use his speed to get open. This guy can be really explosive for a lot of teams.
Yeah, again, Brant, all these names that we're mentioning, these guys go to the right spot and you're going to see the doors come off. Like if you get Tyler Scott in Atlanta, where they're really lacking that wide receiver 2 option, where he's with a quarterback he's got a little history in with Desmond Ridder, that could be really fun for a guy like him.
Yeah.
The last guy I've got on my list is a guy that's sitting comfortably in the 5th round right now. It's Trey Palmer, the 22-year-old wide receiver out of the University of Nebraska. He did spend 3 years of his collegiate career at the University of LSU. So really, for those of you who haven't heard, or maybe you just heard about him at the combine, this guy was the fastest timed wide receiver at the combine. He ran a 4.33 40. He was also clocked at the Senior Bowl with a true game and full pad speed of 21.45 miles per hour on a breakaway reception he had there in the Senior Bowl. So again, this is a guy that I think you're going to see. He's definitely going to be drafted just based on his speed because of his potential use in the punt return and kick return game. But I think this is a guy that I think it's going to take him a year or two in the NFL just because of how unpolished he is to really find his knack. But some team and some coach will utilize him and his speed and get him involved somewhere in end rounds, wide receiver screens. This is a guy that's going to have some initial value in his first year, especially if your league does allow you to rack up return yards as points as well. In his career at Nebraska, or his collegiate career period, Nebraska, and 3 years at LSU, he had 112 receptions for 1,501 yards and 12 touchdowns. So again, the numbers aren't necessarily gaudy. What is gaudy is that 40 time and in his clock speed at the Senior Bowl. He's the fastest guy at the Senior Bowl with that 21.45 miles per hour on breakaway speed. So the athleticism's there. This is another guy that, again, if he goes to the right system, he's going to be a lot of fun in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. And that speed right there, I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of how Tyreek got his start. I know he look at him now and how explosive he is. Look at him the last few years, how explosive he is. But he kind of got his start based on his speed too. If I'm not mistaken, he was a later round draft pick as well. I don't think he was too late, but his speed is what got him put on the board there. So he absolutely, this guy right there, Palmer, is another guy that could definitely, use his speed to get his name out there and get his draft stock up. Yeah, Tyreek was a 5th round draft pick, as I just pulled it up just to make sure I was speaking the right truths here. So, but yeah, that Palmer with that speed is definitely a guy that will help get on the field and see what he's really worth. So the next guy I'm going to talk about was actually a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. And his draft stock got a little dampered with a lingering foot injury he had this year in 2022. And I think if the NFL and you get the right trainer and he gets that under control, this guy could be one of the biggest steals in the NFL draft. And that's Rashee Rice out of SMU. 6'2", 200 pounds, 22 years old. He's got a 3rd, 4th round draft capital right now. He has great all 3 levels. He's great. He's got good deep routes, good over the middle routes, good out routes. He's had 96 receptions, 1,355 yards, and 10 touchdowns this past year in 2022 with a lingering foot injury. So in my mind, with him, he has to get the foot injury under control and make sure that it's not going to be lingering throughout the NFL. But this guy could slide into almost, if he gets that under control. So you got to make sure you pay attention to that. And I'll be paying close eye to that because I have later draft picks in most of our rookie leagues. But if he gets that under control and he can get that out there on the field, this is a guy that could almost instantly slide into a number 2 wide receiver role in a lot of teams. So I'll be interested to see what happens with him, and especially with the speed that he does possess. If he gets put in a slot wide receiver role at 6'2" and 200 pounds, he's going to be one of the bigger slot wide receivers out there, and really could rack up a lot of yak yards.
Yeah, Rashee Rice is definitely one of my favorite later round guys as well, Brant. And like you alluded to, he's one of those guys that I think he's going to be truly special. He may be one of the better wide receivers that we talk about today. As far as, if I had to put my top 10 together right now, I think he's in there without question. So definitely going to be fun. He goes to the right spot as well. He could be, this guy ends up in Kansas City or something like that, Brant, where we're really missing that alpha wide receiver. His draft stock, he could go up there into the top 3, top 4 potentially. It is what it is with these wide receivers, and he's definitely got the skill set to definitely be an early pick in a rookie draft. He could work himself into a 1st round rookie pick.
Oh yeah.
In fantasy drafts, not going to happen in the NFL, but fantasy drafts. All right, Brant, I saved my favorite for last here. That's the 20-year-old Kayshon Boutte from LSU. Definitely a guy who He had some issues, off the field issues, kind of towards the end of his career, kind of derailed the train, if you will. He was definitely a guy that was really hyped. Definitely was a guy that was going to be mentioned in that top three, but his career didn't quite pan out the way a lot of us thought it would. But I will say the one thing we know about LSU is it's kind of wide receiver U anymore. So, if that stays true with Keyshawn Boutte and his draft capital that's fallen a little bit because of his off the field antics and things, this guy could be an absolute steal for an NFL team and for you on draft day for your league as well. 131 receptions in college, 1,782 yards receiving to go along with 16 touchdowns. Again, this is a wide receiver who was in the SEC, so going against, pro caliber cornerbacks almost week in and week out down there. This is a guy that I think he goes to the right landing spot. Again, I've beat that word or that little phrase like a dead horse in this episode, right landing spot. But when it comes to these later round guys, that's going to be a big deal for all of them. But again, if he goes to that right spot and finds that right fit, this guy is going to definitely be, just like I mentioned with Rashee Rice, he's going to skyrocket up boards, and he's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of value for your NFL or your dynasty teams. This is a guy that I see myself taking if he goes to the right spot in the right draft. I'd put him at an early second round grade right now if he goes to the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a guy that had a lot of hype coming around him, then had those off-field issues to follow the season. But yeah, this is a guy that really could come in and make an impact. I mean, let's look at the first two names that pop off out of your head whenever you think of LSU wide receivers, and that's Jefferson and Chase, and then you look at OBJ. Look at these guys have done. So LSU is. Landry, who's been just sticking around and hanging around and being, still fantasy relevant to this day. Boutte's a guy that definitely has a lot of people's attention. And I think that honestly, the off the field antics may have helped him a little bit by keeping his name out there in the limelight. And then with a few other names out there in the draft coming up, throwing their names and being a higher draft stock, getting their names in the limelight a little bit more, may have maybe shunned a little bit of the problems that Boutte had out of the limelight. But he's definitely a guy that I'll be keeping my eye on, and I really think that with his skill set, he definitely has the capability. Once again, we're going to beat that dead horse landing spot. He could definitely creep into the early second rounds of most rookie drafts.
Absolutely.
I'm out of names for right now.
Okay.
I apparently miscounted when I was writing down notes here.
Hey, that happens. Brent, next week, I know you and I are excited. We're going to do our My Guy episodes. I talked a little bit about one of them today, but I'm going to come back with even more on Tank Bigsby. So, maybe skip that part of the episode if you don't want to hear any more about Tank, but he's definitely become one of my favorite players in this draft class. But we're going to talk about some other guys that we really enjoy. We're going to have about 3 guys apiece. Come at you next week with a little bit less heady stuff. We're going to try to get out a little bit shorter episode on some landing spots potentially in between now and next week for these the NFL draft where players could just be a steal if they go to these spots. So be keeping your eye out for that. And again, like Brant alluded to, if you see his fat mug at the Kansas City draft, don't hesitate to come out and go out and talk to him and get a feel for things. I'm sure he would sign some autographs for the folks. He might charge, but he'd probably sign some autographs. You might have to help him spell his first and last name, but he'd sign.
I don't charge much. It's normally a burger and a beer.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be out and about. I'm going to be enjoying that. I'll have hopefully, as long as they come in time, I'll have my Fantasy Holics gear on. And so don't hesitate to come up, give me a shout, and I'm going to try to do a live from the draft and put it up there on YouTube and on Facebook. It's going to be a fun time. I've always talked about wanting to go, and my dad messaged me and said, let's go to Kansas City. And I said, okay, I'm in.
Simple as that.
Yep.
Simple as that. So anyway, folks, next week we'll be back with the My Guy episode, and then the last Monday prior to the NFL draft, we'll come out and do something a little bit different. We'll see what it is. Maybe we will throw our hat in that mock draft ring or whatever. We'll figure something out as we get closer to that week. But next week we'll be back with our My Guy episodes. If you have any later round running back or later round rookies that you want to get our opinion on, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. We'll definitely give our brash opinion, because that's what we do. You may not like it, you may not love it, you may hate it, but we'll be honest with you whether we like them or don't like them. And we're not always right, Brant? UCLA running backs have eluded you for a few years. So
yeah, just a few years. But yeah, definitely. If you guys have any names that you guys want us to kind of look at their film and break down in our own opinions, definitely reach out and give us those names, because right now, like I alluded to at the beginning of the episode, this is kind of the dead time. There's not a whole lot of news coming out from the NFL, so I am all in on breaking down film right now and watching and trying to figure out my own draft strategy. So right now it's a great time, and I'm going to tell you right now, in our league, in our home league, I have a 3rd and 2 4th-round draft picks, so I'm diving pretty deep into that pool there of rookies. So I definitely will be looking at some names that may not have any impact whatsoever, but they may end up being, steals of the draft. So I definitely have no problem breaking down some film and talking about some.
I was going to say, if you're diving head first, you may want to be careful, because shallow water, you could break your neck, whatever. But as tall as you are, you could dive head first into a red Solo cup and not hit the bottom. You get stuck for sure on the way down. You're hitting the side.
That cup all the way down.
Yeah. But you're not going to hit the bottom of it. So as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.